Alright. I'm out here in Setagaya, where a real estate agent friend has tipped me off to a rather interesting house, even by Tokyo standards, and I want to take a closer look so that I can model it. Worming my way through a residential area, past multiple train crossings, and close to a pretty well-hidden shrine, I found myself in front of this. It's crazy. Just look at it. You see people making small additions with wood and corrugated metal here and there, but someone went Swiss Family Robinson on this place. It's a castle. Like, is any of this even remotely legal, you think? I will make it clear at this point that this is someone's home in a very residential part of town. Do not come here and bother people. I will be mad at you. This is your warning to not tap the glass. But with that in mind, I quickly took a couple of photos for reference and made my way out of there. So if I want to model this thing, I need to figure out a good starting point. There's just so much stuff, and I need to strip some of that back and look at the big shapes in this house, and build it the same way they did. Main building first, then a load of extra woodwork added after the fact. Ignoring all the flora and extra stuff piled on top, the core of this building seems to be a pretty compact 2-floor house with a small roof access door. But looking over my footage and some satellite photos, it seems like this top section actually stretches across most of the building. This will happen a lot during the process of modelling this place, so get used to me just panicking and adding extra stuff on. Finally feeling confident enough in what this place is, I open up Crocotile and start laying out the footprint we're going to be working with. This whole place kinda follows this hill up to the back, so I try and keep that in while still retaining some of that DS era Pokemon feeling of separating things into levels by making a very hard slope up half of a tile and then staying flat at the very back. After that, I start building up the walls, quickly drawing some rough versions of the textures that I can touch up later. It's not uncommon here that when you're getting a house built to save some money by having a fancy looking facade. That could be brick tiles or maybe some Tudor style beams, whatever reflects you the best. But only having that on the side of the building that people are going to see. If half of your building's hidden in an alleyway, then who cares what that side looks like. But to have 3 different types of tile on there, that definitely feels a little more unique. With a really basic shape blocked out, I do include some of the wooden additions here, just to help me visualise which floor of the building is which. But then I go back to the textures I drew and start making things look a little nicer. Changing the size of those tiles to blend a bit better, tweaking colours, and adding a little shadow to give the illusion that those flat walls have a little more shape. I finish up the main part of the building by drawing some extra tiles for each of these textures that I can put doors and windows on top of. Trying to add some shadow in, which defines where our light source will be coming from already, and spending a little extra time on the sliding front doors. Not because they're going to be super prominent or anything, mostly just because I found them and the rest of this shaded entryway kinda pretty. I slap on a couple of windows and fly screens onto this front side as well, which honestly I'm not entirely sure exist in the real house, but when I'm layering stuff up over there later, it'll add to the noise and the clutter. And that's phase 1 of the build done. The closest thing as far as I can tell to what the building actually used to look like. I've got to admit that it's a little plain, so let's fix that. Using the same wood texture that I used to mark the floors of the building before, I start to go around the outline of these lookout towery type things up top. I've got to admit that it was really fun just trying to figure out how all of this fits together. And I think what's going on here is that we have 2 towers on slightly different levels of elevation, accessed by a ramp coming down from the main roof. I couldn't quite tell what the floors of these were made out of, possibly wood again, but I see a lot of small structures around Tokyo that are made out of this corrugated metal stuff. So it wouldn't be out of place to see here, And honestly, I just like having some variety in the materials that we're using. I also recoloured this to make a transparent corrugated plastic wall, which isn't looking so transparent for now, but we'll get back to that later. I throw together some simple shelters here using the same maroon coloured wood, and then we get to use another material that I see all of the time in Japan, our trusty, reliable blue tarp. It's pretty haphazardly attached to the real building, and probably not doing much in the way of waterproofing anymore. So I emulate that here by putting a few tiles together into a cube, and then manipulating those vertices in a very off-grid manner until they look sufficiently strewn across there. Both giving these some support and adding to the chaos are these long wooden poles, which aren't really cut to any particular size, but they are fun to drag around and make all lopsided here. And I can reuse these to make some more solid looking supports that fix the platforms to the top of the building too. Now that the lookout towers are fixed down and apparently ready to weather whatever typhoon gets thrown at them, we finally reach the phase of this build that I like to call adding things and stuff. This little roof thing that sticks out from nowhere in particular. Some structurally integral trellis, which I'm positive is holding this whole thing together. Hanging stick things. Yeah, I have no idea what these are beyond being decorative. These window bars and a couple of rails, which I guess are supposed to be for Juliet balconies. Storm shutters, and some actual roof tiles for the single uncovered bit of roof at the back there. One of the last big things missing now that make this place what it is, all these vines and plant life, which at first I thought was your typical nature reclaiming the world stuff that you see on every street here. But when I moved closer, I realised that these are actually grapevines. Ain't that cool? Like, how often do you see that? I draw these very Super Mario Bros looking vines that have a good amount of colour variation and I can repeat in a big string, snaking back and forth across a building, coming out of woodwork, off the edge of balconies, all the way down to the floor, and stretched and rotated in places to not be overly uniform. Even putting in a plastic awning here for them to spill out onto. And I swap out a few of the tiles here and there to be a variant that has bunches of grapes on to really complete that look. It's maybe not quite as bushy as the real thing, but I can see this all coming together now and I'm pretty happy with things. I start polishing things off with some clutter and woodwork outside of the front door. I do have to admit to feeling a little lazy by this point, and I definitely don't go all out on the bird statue here, but I get enough of the shape in there to get the idea across, especially when it's going to be in the dark later. And I do a little potted bush here, making it Minecraft style with the duplicated texture in a cross pattern, before making it a little more irregular by fiddling around with some of the vertices. All that we're really missing at this point is some junk. I recolour the blue tarp texture a couple of times and use the same technique of making a box and then warping it to look more interesting, and throw a couple of those in this little storage area. I slap some pipes and beams on the side, and paint this dirty mark on the side of the building just with a low opacity brown, which should help break up the repeating patterns a bit, and we're so close now. You might notice in some of the footage some things that I've missed. For example, like an entire door next to this area. And I think some stairs may be hidden at the back behind the vines. And honestly, the more I look at this place, the more I find. It's an absolute labyrinth just hidden in a normal street. And despite it not being perfect, I've really loved working on it. But part of the visual clutter that you see looking at this place isn't even from the building itself. It's from this electrical pole outside, which I really wanted to include here. Oh, fun fact, everyone will tell you that the reason all the wires are above ground here is because it's easier to fix after an earthquake. Wrong. I looked it up, and apparently when they were rebuilding after the Second World War, it was just way cheaper. And like, people just got used to it after that, I guess? and that's how it's been done ever since. Anyway, the last thing I want to do here is to just shrink down this comically large sign with the incorrect kanji just a little bit, and then pull the wires across enough so that they cover the whole building. And are you ready? Here's the exciting bit, into Blender. Part of the reason I wanted to render this out in Blender is for the nicer lighting compared to Crocotile, but also because I can adjust materials on individual faces, like our corrugated plastic here, which I can make transparent finally. But otherwise, we're ready to press the button and we're all done here. Hanging in the Louvre, put it on a t-shirt. But for now, I'll let this thing speak for itself. I'm trying something a little different with this video, so if you liked it, please let me know in the comments, or maybe just give it a like if you feel so inclined. And if you're new here and want to see what I make next, then why not subscribe? I'd really appreciate it. But that's all for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.